Welcome to Sumbits, where we decode the PowerSchool development experience. Sumbits is brought to you by MBA. Let's start the show.
Welcome, everybody. It's been a long hiatus, but we are back. Sorry for the delay. Hope you all had a happy New Year's and Merry Christmas and all that fun stuff. Happy holidays. But we are back. Sumbits is still a thing, but hopefully you didn't forget about us. As always, we're still here with Ryan Cockrum and Eric Scheidel. For our viewers, you can see that we got a new face today. If you happen to be in Orlando with us, you may have met Mark. Mark's actually my former boss. So hopefully no terrible stories come out today, but if they do, so be it. Today we're going to talk about basically what all PS admins should know. A lot of our old episodes have really been based around more of the developer side of PowerSchool, but we want to get into a little conversation about what the PowerSchool admins need to know and things that they should do, even if they aren't developers. And sorry, Mark, you're not much of a developer. You've taken some classes. You're getting there. But you're a good person to bring in for this topic. But one thing that isn't changing is we're still having some drinks. Today, my bourbon of choice is Penelope. This happens to be a barrel strength version of Penelope. It is delicious. It's actually a store pick from a place relatively close to me. No, actually, I picked this up when I was up in Wisconsin. I forgot about that. So thank you for, I think, Total Wine up there in Wisconsin in the Madison area. Delicious bourbon. What are you guys drinking?
Well, I've gone on to, I was exploring the bourbons, courtesy of Sean, or, his knowledge. But I mean, at the end of the day, I've just really, it's the price that always makes me limit my love for single malts. But I found a nice one that's pretty inexpensive for $45. Canadian, and I'm quite fond of this one. It's in that peaty realm of deliciousness, and I found a new favorite. Is basically what it comes down to. So
I'd like to ask: is it actually an Islay Scotch?
Well, I mean, it's a Scotland Scotch. It doesn't say Islay necessarily.
Okay, I'm just curious.
Yeah, it doesn't mention Islay, but.
Fair enough.
It is definitely Scotland.
And Eric, I got to give you a little bit of crap. If everyone watching has watched the progress of Eric, I think the very first episode we did, he even mentioned that he had just gotten a haircut and shaved everything. We'll leave it there. So we all watched him grow his hair out for a year. And I don't know if you got a haircut at all, but for the people that are watching, Eric is back to bald.
The Chia Pet is starting anew.
So apparently it's just every January he's going to get a haircut.
So a couple new things here on my end. This is the first episode I've recorded in a year where I lost the dome. Or got the dome back, I guess you might say. And this is my first episode in my new digs. I'm kind of excited. MBA moved to a new office, and as of November last year, we actually started working from the office instead of remotely again. So super nice spot here on the west side of Madison. Swing by and say hi sometime. Unfortunately, now, part of me was going, I'm in the office today, and we're recording, so I don't know that it'd be appropriate to bring a beer with me. And just before we started recording, Alicia pokes her head in and she's like, well, did you bring some beer? So I really should have. I'm drinking water, but at least I've got the red Solo cup to give it a little bit of the party vibe.
And for next time.
That's right.
There you go. They've raised the limit for you, so it's allowed to be brought into the office. So good for you.
Yeah, I don't know. She didn't specify that it was only for Sumbits recordings.
I mean, so you get credit for today, so there is tomorrow.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think that's a question you want to ask. I just want to roll with it.
Was this the kind of boss he was, Sean, or?
Well, we did work in a school, so drinking in the office was pretty not allowed.
That is not allowed. which is why today I am also sipping on some water as well. But I did bring a visual aid. I taught for 15 years, and you can't have a good conversation without a visual aid. This is from from one of my buddies from Texas, from Three Nations Brewing. This is the Cozy Bavarian. Sean knows that I'm partial to dark.
Absolutely.
And the thicker, the better. And this is Three Nations Brewery. And it's a dark cherry toffee chestnut Marzen. So it's really, really tasty.
Oh, yeah.
Sign me up.
You're in good company for sure.
So
I assume you have had that one at least.
Yes, I love it. Yeah. So the next time we all get together in person, I'll make sure to invite the Cozy Bavarian to spend some time with us.
Sounds like a wonderful plan. Well, hey guys,
wait. Do we have a visual aid for the Cozy Bavarian?
Does he have a name, or is he just invited to the party?
Is that just what we call him?
I mean, there has to be some element of surprise for the future.
That's right. So for our listeners and viewers that don't know Mark or didn't get a chance to meet Mark in Orlando, give us a little rundown, Mark. Where are you hailing from? This is probably the closest physical location, other than when we were all together in Orlando, that I've actually been to a guest.
If I stick my hand out, Sean could probably give me a high five from his location. Relatively speaking, I'm in Northwest Indiana, south of Chicago also. As Sean said, he and I worked together for several years. We've been friends for a long time, but we've had a lot of good adventures over those years. I spent 15 years in the classroom teaching 6th grade science. So, this last round of weather storms is right up my alley. I love it. So East Coast should watch out because we got all these troughs lining up out here. So it's been good for a while, but it could change. So I taught for 15 years and then got tapped to be the technology director. And at that time, we're talking, what was that, 2017? 2016, they wanted me to step in and be the technology director. They wanted an education-focused person, which I'm biased, I guess, but I think that's the best way to go because I work with all the staff. I student taught in this corporation. I taught in the middle school. I've had 4 kids go through this district. So it's really a small community that I really love, and I'm thankful to be here. But with that being said, PowerSchool has taken me some places that I never expected. I mean, to meet you guys. That was I'm a big nerd because I think of you guys are like rock stars, and I'm excited to be on the show. But this is my 14th year as tech director. During my first year, the first task that I had was to head up the new SIS selection committee. When I started teaching, I thought I was a rebel because I didn't use a grade book. Like I did it all on the computer.
Green binder.
But you didn't use a grade book, as in you didn't use a technology grade book. You still used something on Notepad. That was backwards.
Exact opposite.
Shout out to the old timers. Excelsior grade book is what I started on way back, and then. We switched from SDS being on-premise. We had a server, and it drove our high school guidance counselor nuts to use school data systems and to keep all the updates. And, we're talking 2000s that was going on. And then we switched to a cloud platform of SDS, which sounded great until all 50 of their districts who ended at the same time are trying to write their grades and run their reports and calculate honor roll. So we decided we were not going that route. We needed to have a solution that was something that was flexible, could be customized, and could meet the needs that we had. So we looked at 2 different options, one being Harmony, which was is still popular in Indiana, and I'm not throwing any shade on them. It works for some people, and we consider it really, really to be one of the top runners because it was customizable for Indiana. But we wanted to go with a larger scale solution, something that we could grow into. And that's where we're at with PowerSchool. So I was the PowerSchool admin for a few years, and it got to be too much. I couldn't be the tech director and the PowerSchool admin. Sean was brought on before I was the tech director, not much before that, a couple years.
Yeah.
And found his love of data and Excel and number and programming and, all things that nerdy that we love, and handed him the reins to PowerSchool about the time that we gave iPads to all of our students and MacBooks to our teachers, and there was no way to manage two big projects like that at one time. So, as they say, the rest is history, pretty much. I learned a new term, Scrum Manager. That's what I am. I'm enough to be dangerous. I can do lots of things, and I'm always looking to learn something new. I'm coming up on 30 years in education, which is crazy because I don't feel that old. And it's because I like to be flexible and learn new things. So that's kind of the background that I've had. Sean left us a few years ago, and happy that you got to spread your wings, buddy. That was a good thing for you to do.
So yeah, Mark's kind of in an interesting position because he onboarded PowerSchool, so he was at the forefront at his district of bringing on PowerSchool, and was that PowerSchool admin for a number of years. And then when I came on and I was a PowerSchool admin, he just kind of dropped it and didn't do much with it. He had too many other things going on. And I think, Mark, in the last couple of years, you've kind of really dove back into PowerSchool and seen a lot of the changes that have happened in the SIS, and you're now heading back to conferences and starting to learn some customization stuff. You're starting to see some more power of it. But one thing that we always did was, and I know, Eric, you've mentioned this a million times, and I think anybody that's ever taught customizations or dealt with customizations is, no reason to recreate the wheel if it's already out there. Go out there and steal it from PowerSource or one of the other, many websites that have free plugins. So Mark, do you remember back in the day, if obviously they weren't plugins, but there were some, customizations? Do you remember like any of the first customizations that you were looking at that you brought into PowerSchool?
Well, it kind of, I don't know where it all ended up, but one of the things we were really desperately trying to get away from was making object reports.
The whole reason I got into development.
So Sean tells the story about how we.
That's what what's the alternative? That's what we have ReportWorks for, though.
I laugh every time we have to restart the server. We got to wait on ReportWorks to boot up. Well,
that was my trivia for Vance when we had him. Was what was the new and better? I can't remember, but the new and better reporting tool that replaced object reports. And he said ReportWorks, and I said false. It was never better.
I apologize, Mark. I interrupted. So you
that's
for
anytime,
customizations for reporting.
So we worked on that for a while, and we turned the ruler over from me to Sean. We have a silver ruler that you use to make those object reports.
Like metal ruler. It was like
metal
whole thing. Yeah, it was metal.
I used clear.
Yeah, we've had this conversation before, Ryan. And I was like, yeah, that would have been a much better idea. But it was the ruler that Mark used for object reports early. So that is the Rensselaer ruler for object reports.
Rensselaer. There's a sport team name right there, the Rensselaer Rulers.
Anyway, Mark, continue.
Yeah. So anyway, we did a lot of customizations back in the day, and I remember when the enhanced parent portal came out. That was a huge improvement for us, and we would gnash our teeth when they would do an update, and then something would be broken because we're like, okay, what's not working, and it would be hidden by the parent portal. So having a good handle on what plugins you have installed is a very helpful thing as an admin, because you forget, because you just treat those things as part of stock PowerSchool. So we had a lot of plugins, and Sean was behind most of finding those back in the day. And it would be funny because I'd be like, hey, have you seen this? And, have you heard of the custom reports bundle? And be like, yeah, we got that installed.
Yeah, it's already in there.
A lot of shout outs to PDS here, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was a treat to meet Rob down in Florida.
Absolutely.
Good guy.
It's a name that I mean, just a side note on that. It's a name that I'd seen on the forums so often, and when he came and introduced himself to us, and I was he said he was like, starstruck, whatever. For us, I think it was more from my side to see him. Like, I was like, holy moly, you.
So what were some of the customizations for you guys back in the day when that was, happening, that changed your outlook on PowerSchool?
I would say Enhanced Parent Portal was the first one in the custom report bundle, and as speaking of Rob, as I told him too, I cut my teeth development wise on those, because I would open them up, look at the guts, see what was done, and be like, oh, that's how they get around being at the district office and still being able to run a report, but needing the Curse School ID when you're in a school, like little things like that. You're going, obviously that report's doing that, so how? Those would be two major ones. And I mean, funny side note, as being an admin, your staff who, I mean, I didn't necessarily go and tell them sometimes that this was a plugin that I got from another place. They're just like, "Oh, Ryan, that thing you put in there, that work is awesome." Yeah.
Oh, I absolutely did that. I will take all of that.
Those, you gotta sometimes keep that illusion up. I mean, obviously, you're gonna take that other time that they think you're.
Ryan, it's not like you're ever actually going to meet the developer of these things.
Right.
Oh, but he's also very, very open with and happy to say, use it and open it up and take it and build on it. And you know what? The thing I think he's most interested in is you telling him what you've done and what you've improved on, and even sending it to him. Because I know there's been instances where he's gone and taken that modification and then released it again from his own website so that others can make use of it as well.
But obviously, Eric, coming from a different background, you weren't in a district, but when you first started, doing customizations, I can only assume that you were out there looking at what other people were doing. Is there anything that comes to mind early on that you kind of like looked at and used?
Oh, wow. When I think about the early days, it was, I unfortunately came into MBA. There were no other developers here for me to learn from. So everything was trial and error, throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. And sadly, the first major project I ever did, and this was back before database extensions, before plugins. This was like 2009, 2010. And we needed a way to process immunization compliance in PowerSchool. I didn't know how to customize PowerSchool, so I built a separate application, hooked it into the PowerSchool database, and just to get student information out, stored the. It was a hot mess. I mean, I didn't know at the time. I mean, you could use back then. It was virtual tables to achieve this thing. So that was the first major project. So not really so much learning how to customize PowerSchool. That really didn't start until they sent me to my first PSU in Orlando. And man, that just changed my world. It's like, Tila's sequel? You can do what now? And PowerSchool's gotten so much better about this now. They have the developer site and everything. But I remember going up to the instructor afterwards and just being like, this was so amazing. I learned so much. Where is this documented? How do you know all this stuff? And he goes, tribal knowledge. I'm like, oh, I'm not one to shoot the messenger, but I wanted to punch him, man. And it's like, this is so much great information. And you sell this product, PowerSchool, based on the fact that it's customizable. So, yeah, they've come a long way, though. And you got to give them props, I think, for not everything they do is top notch, but they've done in terms of expanding the capabilities of customizing and putting in database extensions and plugins, that kind of stuff. But I digress from the question. Yeah, for me, it was getting out there and learning at PSU. And then, so that, and it's still a lot of trial and error. And then one day, thank God, I found this PSUG family. And I bumped into a bunch of nerds like, I'm not going to say his name, and Coffee and Vance Allen, and you exchange ideas and you learn so much from collaborating. Those conferences are key, man.
Yeah. I do want to quickly interject before you throw your answers to the same question, Sean. For any of those folks listening, we did start by saying we're not going to be too development and customization oriented on this current episode. So far, we have been, and we apologize. We are going to get into the non-customization development content as well. So keep on listening.
We're still transitioning.
Yeah, we're still fleshing that out.
But no, for me, I mean, Mark nailed it on the head. It was definitely, Enhanced Parent Portal was the one that really comes to mind and started to make you realize, there are a lot of things that you can do within PowerSchool that isn't necessarily part of the core product. And you even mentioned it, Ryan, PDS, Power Data Solutions. That was a place I would visit weekly just to see if there was anything new coming out there. And eventually you get into Power Source Exchange and again start like sorting different ways, sort by new, see what's new out there, or sort by the number of downloads to see what the popular things are, and just see, are there things out there that I haven't even thought of that we could be using PowerSchool for? And
I think the answer is always yes.
Yeah, for sure. And it was always like, Mark, I found this. Check this out. And interestingly enough, one of those was Map My Students or Map Your Students, which used the geolocation tool within PowerSchool. And I just started getting notifications today that it's end of life, that they're not supporting it anymore. So I thought that was like perfect timing for this conversation. But yeah, so I mean, again, we don't want to stick on customizations this whole time, but I think that's, as a system admin that's not a developer, that's a great place to go look, Power Data Solutions and Power Source Exchange, and see if there are ways of using PowerSchool in a different way that isn't necessarily out of the box. So yeah, moving on. Mark, is there anything that like comes to mind that as a PowerSchool admin, one things that you were just like, I really need to wrap my head around this, and I need to focus on this because nobody else is going to?
Or cautionary tales of being a PowerSchool admin that maybe people, the uninitiated, might benefit from?
Well, if I'm looking at like advice that I would go back in time and give myself, when I was in college, the best advice that the professors in education could give me was get to know your janitor, get to know your custodian, get to know your secretary. I don't remember which of the guys that was on here that mentioned it about, know your people.
It was Nick.
They do.
Yep.
Yeah, we don't listen to you though.
That is so true. If you don't know what your people need, it doesn't matter what you know. Yep. You've got to be able to identify what the problems are that your people are having. And once you do that, life gets a lot easier. And then I guess the next step, beyond knowing what the problem is you said it before, is there already a solution? Google has ruined creativity. There is
in the best way possible.
In the best way possible. Unique thoughts are very, very rare in this world at this point. Somebody has already had the problem you have had. So start looking for a solution, and how can you take it to the next level to make it fit what you're looking for. So, we talked about customizations. That's kind of the end game right there, right? I mean, but there's a lot built in PowerSchool that if you don't know that it can do it, right, Eric, you may spend a lot of time chasing the rabbit down the hole, and you could have just used this already built-in tool and your life would have been simpler. So, getting to know the ins and outs of PowerSchool, everything that it can do.
That little phrase there just kind of messed my head up a little bit now that I'm thinking about it. But Google ruined creativity because it kind of did.
I feel like that should be like on a poster in the corner of my office somewhere. But gosh, because we kind of started out with and you said I've said this all the time, Sean, is don't build it if you can steal it. Another rule that I tell folks is don't customize it if it's not a customization. For example, you talk about knowing what tools are available to you. Language translation toolkit allows you to relabel things in PowerSchool. Someone called me up one day. I got a real quick, easy customization job for you. You probably won't even charge me for it. I just want to change this word on the demographics page to something else. And I'm like, that's not a customization. That's what LTK is for. Yeah. So just understanding the product, the features it has, so that you don't solve a problem that's not really a problem in the first place.
Right. Yeah, I will say this, Eric. Even the name of that tool is a little misleading, is because I think the intent of that tool was to use it for, Spanish translation or Canadian translation.
Just all your buddies into guy and all your guys into buddy.
Yeah, exactly, and everything ends with an A. What I was saying. No, so I think the intent was to have, an entire language translation rather than using it just for, changing really the labels of things.
Right. It's a fun story that I often tell when I'm teaching, but it can be used to just change the labels. We actually work with a prison that has PowerSchool. And as an exercise, the first thing I ever did with language translation toolkit is try to figure out how to change the word student to inmate. And then someone at a conference I was teaching at saw that, and they were like, that's not very funny. So I told them, well, actually, it was done for a good reason. First of all, it was done for a good reason. Here's the story. And second of all, it's kind of funny.
A little true, right?
But though, that's a good point. You mentioned, Sean, that it was probably tailored to switch to Spanish from English. And that's why you go looking for solutions, because somebody said, hey, I don't need to change language. I can just go through and tag everything that was labeled student and make it inmate, because that's what works for me right now. And that's where creativity is. It's how you use the tools that are out there.
Yeah.
And joking aside, I know when you said Canadian, translation, there was some lightness there. But the truth is, we changed standard to outcome in my district, because that's what we called them, outcomes, not standards. And I remember my education coordinator being very sticky about calling them outcomes and saying they are not standards, they're outcomes. Okay. How do we change them all? All right, let's figure it out. And then it wasn't even my district. It was one of my neighboring districts that did figure it out and pointed me at it. And then we did it, and it worked great.
So this begs a question that I want to ask for those of you that have been PowerSchool administrators, because I never have been. Ryan, when you tell that story, my answer is just, in my gut, it's like, no, they're called standards in PowerSchool. It's not worth the effort. Mm-hmm. How do you pick your battles? How do you if we just use the product as it's intended, it's going to save everybody work and time and stress. How do you decide when something is a big enough deal to pursue, or let somebody down and tell them we don't have the resources to?
You know what? So what I would say, so it's funny because I had this conversation, just speaking of the past, with with someone that works here. Just it was today or yesterday, but it revolving around PowerSchool security. Like when you're an administrator and setting security, which is a very, very prominent thing when you're a PowerSchool administrator. And it would be what do you allow people to do? And like, for instance, one of the things I locked down right off the bat after bad experiences was I was the only person in my district that could store grades. And there would be this 1 week where, and this was endorsed by my superiors, but there would be this 1 week where everything's set. People would call me. I'd run down this list of questions that they'd have to be like, yes, 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 and then I'd store their grades. And this was all to avoid them calling me every 5 minutes and asking to restore because they're like, oh, we didn't get this one. I'm like, okay, go and check, make sure, yada, yada, but more to the question of how do you pick your battles there, Eric, it's like, I think it comes down to when could a mishap based on that battle be more impactful than the next. So one battle was teachers didn't want their comments being shown on the parent portal until they were comfortable that there was no typos or that they wouldn't be compared to other teachers or things like that. And I mean, there's no security issue. There's no problem that could affect a student there. I felt like the reasoning wasn't the strongest, like, because people are just really, I don't know, there's a vanity point to it, but in the end, whatever. I'll figure it out. I'll do it. But then I at one point when going into the stored grades page allowed more people to change grades, and I realized that people were changing grades haphazardly, and maybe it wasn't always done properly or even realized it was done. I was like, ooh, there's something that could actually affect a student's future. So I locked that one down, and when there was pushback, I dug my heels in because I was like, you know what? Are you comfortable? Like when I'd have administrator calling, because I only allowed administrators at that point at schools to change grades in addition to myself if they needed me to do it. But when they called back and said I need my secretary to be able to do that, I said, your secretary has also accidentally changed them and then like really messed up that grade, and here's the data trail and everything like that. And I'm like, so are you comfortable with this not being caught, and then perhaps that student's transcript impacting their university admissions? And they're like, good point. so I was so that's how I picked my battles. I was like, does it impact the student, or does it just make people, I don't know, hurt their feelings? If it just hurt their feelings, or like, actually that's the wrong way to say. It came down to that vanity thing, I guess is the better way to put it. Like the comments thing, whatever. They really wanted it. They were really loud about it, and it also didn't matter one way or the other to the student's future. So cool. I'll hide the comments until you're comfortable showing them. The grade thing, that could really mess up a kid's data. So I will dig my heels on that one.
That's a good answer. I mean, you've got to figure out what is superficial, things that are superficial, and things that are impactful, that are long-term changes. We have issues where, I need to change the name of this course. I want to go in and change the name of the course because of the way it's now an honors course. And okay, so if we change the name of that course, anybody in the stored grades table who has that course, now they're going to look like they took an honors course. Or the opposite, somebody who took an honors course that we now want to make it, just a general class or a supported class. We have to be careful because those changes, when we think about them in the moment, they don't seem like a big deal, but they have lasting repercussions. So that's a really good point. And one thing that I know Sean labored over intensely is when our school changed from a 12-point grade scale to a 4-point grade scale. So that 4.0, and they thought it was this easy process, and it had long-lasting repercussions for those students.
My favorite part of this entire story is the fact that this decision was made before, board approved, was made before I even knew about it. So there was no digging my heels. The decision was made. I had to figure out how to do it. Yeah. So I mean, there is no, to speak specifically on that, project that ended up being quite a long project, but there is no like date where everything you can like just take it from this point.
Mm-hmm.
Having to go back and change every historical grade in our entire PowerSchool history.
Yikes.
Yeah, that was a good time.
Well,
However, silver lining, some good things came out of it. We found a lot of really bad data that was like really messing with people's GPAs.
Yeah.
I mean, we had some people with GPAs that were like, 68 because of a typo.
Mhm.
Yep.
When a historical grade was manually changed, and all of a sudden, the cat went over the keyboard and put in 8 9s instead of 4.
And submit is gone.
Yeah.
And that's what made me think of it when you were talking about, boy, we probably should have had a security setting at that point on,
Right.
or turned on change history. So if it would have been a thing back then, it would have saved us a lot of time trying to figure out, how did this kid get a 68?
Well, on that topic of courses, again, that was another one I had locked down for very similar reasons, and luckily I had a provincial document for all the courses, a course catalog that I could fall back on, and when I first migrated my district from our old SIS, which was each school had their own database. I combined all that, found all the courses that were named weirdly, or they had the same course number but was a whole different course as far as the actual name goes, and I combined all that and I put the proper things in. Going forward, I said, if you need a new course, you need to enter historical grade, you have to call me, and then you give me the course number, I will look it up, enter that into the system, and then you can enter that, and then it'll actually draw to the right course number. If you need to change a course name, unless it says that in the course catalog, you're not. Because they wouldn't change it, because that's the truth. If they wanted to change the name, they'd create a new course and course number for, the database integrity reasons that it should be that way. So, yeah.
Yeah, Indiana gives you some freedom on that, which sounds nice until
it doesn't.
Yeah, those scenarios come to light. So Indiana actually uses instead of like a standard course name and a standard course number, the Indiana State Reporting leverages the alternate course number.
Oh, which was, side note here, for stresses in the PowerSchool admin portal and ReportWorks, the alternate course number was not available in ReportWorks.
Yep.
That was annoying. And I remember one time I asked, this is early on, and we asked an individual representing the company, can we get that? And they're like, that seems like no problem. That shouldn't be an issue at all. I'll raise it up. And we never heard anything about that one again. And that's life. But I thought it was weird that of all the course data, which was literally everything, that was the only one that was not available through ReportWorks.
So we've talked a lot about like locking things down for security purposes, but what about just security in general? It's as a PowerSchool administrator, even as not a developer, we've talked about it in previous episodes where, one of the first things I think on the episode with Nick, you're coming into a new district. So the first thing you do is you go do a security audit and figure out, but not everybody is coming into a district with 10 years of PowerSchool experience. Maybe they're new to it altogether. So what are some things that come to mind for you guys as far as security, like the initial things that you would look at in a quote unquote security audit?
Well, I guess how many, again, it's hard to even say to put myself in the shoes of somebody who's brand new into the situation is hard, because clearly I'm not. I would say you look up and see how many admin accounts there are and how many admin accounts have district level access with, admin level access, even that, because you could have an admin login, but with limited access.
Yeah.
But if you're new, that's pretty hard to even conceive of, to look up and find.
My mind immediately went to the users by group report.
Yes.
So where you can
But
actually,
even then, you don't even think to go there, or even so. How do you get there? I guess is the right way to put. Even throw it out there for anyone who's listening to this, who is in this boat.
System settings under security. There's a link to users by group, and what that's going to give you is every admin group or all of your groups with the name of the admin user next to it. So you can actually see how many people are in each of your groups. Because then you can go back to system setup and groups under security, and then actually check and see what that group security access is actually given those people.
It's I would say a good, like, especially as, again, this harkens back to this conversation I had with someone yesterday or earlier, from my district, going from a lot of independent databases where, and I mean I hated doing this, but where the secretaries were the all in all essential SIS administrators in their school, it didn't work. It couldn't work to have now a unified SIS and have each one of them still be this full all-out administrator. Obviously, that wouldn't work, and there will be pushback if you're in that situation, especially if you're still implementing PowerSchool. If today you're implementing PowerSchool and you're migrating from a situation like that, you're going to get pushback. Don't give in. I have to say, it'll be a bumpy road like right now, but you'll have a lot more headaches down the road if you give in. And I mean, it's one of those things that if you don't want to have to prove them wrong because you didn't give in, it's better to have them all say, you were just too scared, you were just too worried, you were just over exaggerating. I'd rather have been, I was more comfortable being said I was over exaggerating or I was being overly cautious than the headache that could have been the alternative. Because I still experience that headache in small doses, but I know how much it could be in a larger dose if I had let things open a little bit more.
Right. I think back to your idea of, if you are just implementing, lock it down tight, because it's always easier to give access than it is to take it away.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mark, do you deal with much security issues these days?
Before I went to PSUG, no. I had a very scary session on security when I was there, and got to thinking, okay, we are open in some areas that we should not be, and I could create some groups in here that would protect people from themselves, because I'm a big believer that people don't maliciously, for the most part, get in trouble. Right. They're not out there to cause havoc and make the admin's life miserable. It's all accidental, and protecting them from getting in trouble, it is more what I see those security settings as doing. So we've had some audits and went through and changed some settings, but this summer we're going to visit it again and go back through. And if I was a new admin, the one thing that I would say is, find your group of people, who have that experience, because the learning that I had, and I feel like an evangelist for PSUG here, when I went to the conference this year, it'd been a long time since I'd been to a PowerSchool conference. And, I went to several PSUs and got kind of jaded, because I'm like, okay, well, I know the stock stuff. There's really not a whole lot more. I didn't have a great customization experience. But find people who have that experience and the guidance that you're talking about, Ryan, that to go in and lock it down, and don't be afraid to stand your ground of, hey, we're trying to make sure everything is secure and that we have a good handle on it, and we will release the reins as we see that they need to be done. Find those people who can give you that support, because sometimes that pressure is going to come from up the chain, and you don't know, should I stand my ground or not?
And you know what? One of the biggest things, and I mean, the terminology was different in Canada than the U.S., but FERPA, and that's such a big consideration because, like you're saying, the accidental side of it. Technically, even if you accidentally see information you're not supposed to see, someone could get in trouble. Accidents, whatever, it's still something you're not supposed to see. So it's a consideration you want to make sure that you're careful of. And I mean, even when I'm tasked with, working on customizations that involve information. I mean, I'm going to use the vaguest of terms here, but they wanted an alert for something that was highly sensitive. And I'm just like, whoa, everything about that is like, whoa. So, I mean, number one, how are you, like, we need that secure. So it's like, there will be a group that you have to put people into, and only by access to that group will you even see this alert. And not only that, will you only see the fields to enter the data. So like, because I mean, again, security, and now we're talking customization a little bit, but it's still the same thing as like, health information screen. A lot of people shouldn't see a health information screen unless they should.
Yeah. That's why it's an entirely different section in the group security.
I want to throw out here, we're actually going through a lot of security training at MBA right now, just to be sure that, when we're traveling or not, we're keeping things safe. And one thing that gets harped on a lot is the human factor. We've talked a lot about how are things set up, what's your architecture, what are your security groups, are you using roles? But one of our biggest vulnerabilities is that human factor. And I think it happened, I want to say just 2 or 3 years ago. Do you guys remember? I think there was a headline in the story was PowerSchool hacked by a student.
Right.
And at the end of the day, no, PowerSchool was not hacked by a student.
It was hacked.
Yeah,
right.
Somehow, teacher let him stand over her shoulder while she's or he's typing in his credentials, or left a system unattended with PowerSchool open. Somehow, I believe a student got a teacher's login credentials and decides that he and his friends, or she and her friends, I don't know who did this, deserve better grades. I got the teacher login. Let's just head to the grade book, friends. So I don't think that the human factor can be overlooked for a second.
We had a similar situation, different data with attendance. A student had figured out the substitute password in one of our high schools and was charging kids $5 to change their attendance.
That's a good business model.
I gotta give the kid props, honestly, because I mean, cool. I mean, as a little troublemaker back when I was a teenager, yeah, cool. But still, holy crap.
Those are the same people that when they get older, they're going to be dyeing horses with berries and selling them back to the owners. For our listeners, this was a pre-recording conversation that Mark shared with us back in the day. Apparently, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, people were stealing horses, dyeing their coats with berries, and taking them back to town to sell them.
You got it. Yep.
These kids, that's their state of mind.
Oh.
So the whole like the teachers walking away and not signing out. I mean, it would be an interesting question for all of our listeners. That did you know that you can set the amount of time that will make the user log out after a certain amount of time of inactivity?
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, well, and if you did, as I experienced too, the pushback of going, it seems like it's too short. It's always logging me out. Well, after that happened, my argument of, well, are you logging out or are you just walking away? Well, that argument all of a sudden made a lot more sense.
Right.
So it's not that we're trying to be a pain, but I mean, if you're not looking at your computer for 5 minutes straight, I don't think it's unreasonable to log you out of your grade book which has all of your students' information and all of their grades, and not only that, their contact information and their birth dates and their health information.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's unreasonable to say, all right, you've been 5 minutes inactive, boop, now you got to put your password back in.
This is a pivot a little bit here, but as technology director, there's been a huge push with all the data breaches and trying to enforce multi-factor authentication
Yep.
on logins. I'm interested to know how that is going to impact PowerSchool in the future. You know, when are they going to implement multi-factor authentication? Because you talk about the data that's in there. You know, you could have a really nice database if you're looking to go on the black market, if you had access to PowerSchool. So, and what's happening is the superintendents are getting a lot of pressure from the insurance companies to want to know how they are protecting that information.
Right.
And the questionnaires, you know, I've been doing this for almost 15 years, that started out, do you have passwords, you know, and now it's like, okay, how are you doing multi-factor authentication? What levels of security do you have between the user and your data, and how protected is it? I think that PowerSchool is going to have to up their game on that a little bit, and it's going to make the admin's life more difficult. And the user's life more difficult. But again, it's back to protecting themselves from themselves.
I'd be surprised if they don't already have it on the drawing board. I'm sure they do. I'm sure it's just also such a massive undertaking to figure out the logistics of it that's why the answer isn't out yet. But I would say I'd be surprised if they don't. Because, I mean, with us, between the three of us, everything we do is multi-factor here. Yeah. And I mean, it's been an understandable push internally, because it makes sense, especially like you're saying, with all the issues that could be happening. So I expect it to be something they're already thinking and working on. But
now I will say they do, since they've allowed like single sign-on, say through Microsoft.
Right.
You know, if for anybody listening and watching, if that is a concern of yours today, that is definitely an option that you can do. Lots of resources out there on PowerSource and community about how to implement that. It's not something that I've actually done, so I don't have a lot of insight on the process of doing that. But so, you know, some of the districts we do work with or do already have that enabled and working. So I do know at least it is an option in one way or another right now. It's just not baked into core PowerSchool yet.
I've seen a ton of them that have gone to Google.
Yep, Google and Microsoft. Absolutely.
I've seen the Microsoft side, not the Google side.
Definitely a thing. You know, one nice thing that PowerSchool did not so long ago, to kind of transition to another topic, but SSL. You know, that was a thing that was kind of an option for a long time. And what was it, 3-4 years ago or so? They started requiring, requiring all of their PowerSchool instances to have SSL, including your test servers, which I thought was really interesting. But since a lot of districts use their own data for test servers, it made sense. So, I mean, I definitely can see that PowerSchool is focusing on security. So I can't imagine that they're not, you know, like Ryan said, that they're not at least thinking about it right now.
Yeah, I mean, this wasn't as much, maybe it was, but it wasn't as much about security, I'll say, as it was just about management and efficiency. But I mean, when I started using PowerSchool, that was when before you could switch teachers, like from schools, like what school you were in. And so, I mean, I'm sure large districts have this, but especially in smaller districts, your music teacher, your art teacher, things like that, they'll go from school to school, and they'll have like 4 or 5 different schools. And so at the outset,
logins.
Exactly.
Yeah.
4 or 5 different grade books. Like, I mean,
yeah.
I felt bad for
if they
them.
can't remember the login, what do? They have that nice little Post-it note on next to the computer on every computer at each school that they're at, that they're only in for like 1 hour a day.
Yeah, and maybe the section they have only has 2 kids, so they got to log into this account with this grade book just to do 2 kids. So I felt bad for them, but luckily it wasn't too long after that they did have I forget what they officially called it at that point, but I mean we'll call it single sign-on for lack of the official term. And the only thing I remember was it was a bit of a pain because there was a thing to merge the accounts, and I did that. But I remember it being a bit of a hassle. But obviously, it was a one-time thing and it ends to a means to an end. So it worked out. So they've got it in mind, obviously, for all those things, and I'm sure they've got this one in mind. Just the logistics of it must be big, daunting.
For sure. So one other subject that I wanted to broach with you guys is, we all know that PowerSchool is gigantic, right? And there's certain areas that the PowerSchool admin is going to see and deal with that most other people don't. Mark, I guess this is kind of geared towards you. Now that you find yourself getting back into PowerSchool in that, sort of administrator role, is there any particular page? Because a lot of times, you might find yourself like just clicking through, looking for things, and then you find like, oh, what's in that link? And you look at it and you're like, oh, that's what's there. Has there been anything like that that's kind of been like a mind-blowing thing that you've gone back to and used, or maybe forgot about over the years that you have found useful?
Well, we talked about the security settings. So going into the user information and getting under those security settings and seeing what's in there for each user, that was something that was eye-opening for me. And, I thought that was a quick fix, something I could do easily to improve the integrity of the system. So those security and system settings, of course, plugin management was huge. Getting under the hood just a little bit to, you really feel like you've done something when you go grab a plugin and drop it in and it works and see where it goes and then dig in and be like, okay, how can I make this better and fit for me?
Well, you're forgetting the most important part when you tell everybody that it's now a thing and you take all the credit for it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. That's yep.
As long as they don't specifically ask if you made it.
Yeah. You're still the one responsible for it being there.
Well, I mean, the answer, I activated that. Yeah. It works. It's fine. So that was a big one for me, is to go in and, kind of turn off some of those customizations, the plugins, to see, okay, what happened and what can we do to make this better? That was a big step for me. And, I took some of the things that Eric has put out there in his customization plugin that was a huge help. Just all the documentation in one place for me. So thank you for that. That really made my day.
It makes my day to hear that it made your day, man. That's one of the rewarding things about what we do here at MBA, or I think what any developer does. Anybody who shares on the PowerSource Exchange or the raw stats of the world, we just love to know that people are benefiting from the work. And so often the feedback we get is when someone's having a problem. So one of the things I personally loved about going to Orlando is actually getting to talk to people face to face and them going, I love this thing that you did. And it's like, finally some positive reinforcement instead of the escalated ticket that someone found a bug. So thank you, Mark. And I'm glad that was useful for you.
Yeah, I mean, that's been great. I was able to take a problem that I had that was outside of PowerSchool. We have, you're familiar with Vape Detectors?
I'm familiar with vapes, but not the detectors thereof.
Okay, so we have basically smart appliances that we put in our bathrooms. And if kids go in there to vape, it detects the vape levels that are in there and then sends a text message back to the principal, who then can watch the camera footage to see who was in there and then decide whether or not they need to be in the vape education program. And if not, then they get ticketed through the local law enforcement. So there's some incentive for them to, not get caught. But we were able to take that vape detector configuration, and my principals are the ones who need to have access to the data. And based on what I learned at PSUG, took what you had in the customizations and was able to basically write a page that is a link inside of PowerSchool that I've got security settings on that just my admins can see, so they can log in and adjust the vape detectors from within inside PowerSchool. I mean, it links back out, but it's all right there, and they don't have to be like, what's the IP address of this device? And it's all right there in PowerSchool.
Very nice.
Yeah. I want to.
Go ahead, Ryan.
No, I'm going to change topic. So if you're on topic still there.
No, I was going to change the topic too, and mine can wait, please.
Well, then I wanted to throw out then, as far as we've talked about PSUG being better than PSU a lot already today, and I mean, I want to throw those, because we're talking about a non-development background, and we're talking about the basic skill sets, and we've also thrown object reports under the bus a little bit. I did it myself. I do want to.
And there are still plenty of people that love object reports, so we can't completely. There's
and that's what I want to say.
And just simple, and it's just nice to sit down and get something done.
And that's what I want to say, though, because I mean, you know what? Especially if because we also talked about time and wearing many hats, and what it's not just what you can do, like as in skill set, is about what you can do as far as time goes. And object reports are a great option, and the best place to learn those are at PSUs, and especially when you're learning the bones of PowerSchool, again, PSUs. So I mean, I would say, like, as an admin, what you need to know is go to a PSU and learn some object reports and things like that, because if nothing else, and time is always an issue, no matter who you are and where you are. Those are great things to use. So I mean, don't listen to us throwing them under the bus and being like, oh, these guys are saying don't use object reports. You only, I mean, the truth is, I made lots and lots of object reports in my time, and I mean, then I started doing other things. But I mean, I know my way around object reports. We all do here. And I mean, that's why we're talking about the ruler, which if you haven't experienced object reports, you'll know what we're talking about once you do. So, yeah. To
that point, it's really knowing what your options are, right? Whether it is a PSUG or a PSU, they always have those lists, right, of the classes that you can take. So know what you want to learn and pick something and go learn it.
And to plug.
And meet people, like you said, the networking, because, if you're not at that PSU or that PSUG and you met somebody, you're going to send them an email and go, how does your district do this? And
the whole, like, PowerSchool user community is very friendly and very open and very sharing. And I mean, right down to that, the PSUG.io group. Like, I mean, if they don't have a link that they can send you, they might just have something that they can just email you to. Everyone is very open with what's out there. It's a real tight-knit but welcoming community that wants to help. Everybody wants to help.
Absolutely.
So I have a reflection more than anything. I want to take us all the way back to the beginning of this podcast, Mark, when you were introducing yourself. So it sounds like you're kind of sort of responsible for bringing PowerSchool to Rensselaer. And would you consider yourself responsible for bringing Sean Covey? Because I'm sorry, here's where my head's going right now. Let me just throw it out there. The whole butterfly flaps its wing theory. I'm thinking Sumbits would not exist if it weren't for Mark. When you connect the dots,
Not wrong.
You're not wrong at all, Eric. I mean, there's been many a lunch that. Are you familiar with Dignation and Kevin Rose and Alex Albrecht?
Not personally.
If you want to go back and watch some, I guess, dated podcasts at this point, but we used to watch them.
They weren't called podcasts then. Podcast wasn't even a thing then. It was a weblog.
So these guys would get on there and they would look at Dig, and basically you could dig a story up or you could dig it down, and then they would
Brian, do you remember Dig?
Pre-Reddit.
Yes, absolutely.
Pre-Reddit. And we would watch that and have a great time just laughing and listening to the fun stories that they had about different things. And, you know, Sumbits is an iteration of that, right? I mean,
well, I think we should have introduced Mark as Mark, the progenitor of Sumbits here.
Yeah. Never thought about it, but it's absolutely true. If he never handed me the reins to PowerSchool, wouldn't be here. Appreciate it, Mark.
Know what impact you're making until it's too late.
or back to what? I don't even remember who the superintendent was when they first came to me and was like, "Hey, you like data? We're going to let you deal with state reporting."
It's all those little steps that get us to where we go today.
Yeah, and then me begging Mark over and over and over about like every week, Mark, I need access to this. Mark, I need access to this. Mark, I need access to this. Sean, do you just want to be the PowerSchool admin? Yes, please.
And how timely, though. I mean, it was at the right time. You think about PowerSchool was back in those days. I mean, we jumped in at the right time. It's been a good ride.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Unless you got anything burning that you want to talk about, I think that's a good time to wrap it up. Mark, thank you so much for joining us. Obviously, personally, thank you for a lot of things. But we can, mush about that later. But Brian, Eric, it's good to be back in the reins.
Thank you, Mark.
We'll be seeing you guys more often, more lately.
Yes, we'll see y'all next time.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks for joining us, and a special thanks to our subscribers. Consider becoming one today. Enjoy more episodes and learn more at mba-link.com.